Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
The Black and Gold Banneret Podcast is brought to you by the Unger Real Estate Group, powered by eXp Realty, proudly serving Orange, Seminole, and Lake counties. Call 407-790-9957 or visit WeSellOrlando.net.
More nonsense talk. Awesome.
When
is this story going to... Seriously, when is it going to die?
Never.
At some point, you have to move on, right? To 28. Why not?
No.
2018?
They'll be talking about this... All right, I'm not talking about it until we actually get into the show. Here we go. Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. My name is Jeff Sharon, along with the usual suspects, Eric Lopez and Brian Murphy, here with us. It's mid-May, and guys, we're still talking about football, aren't we? Unbelievable. But
you guys are. I have a life. I move on. I'm talking NBA playoffs. There's hockey playoffs I'm going to. You guys might. I have a life.
Have fun with the hockey playoffs, by the way.
Me too. I'm looking forward.
We've got a lot to talk about, believe it or not, this week. We're going to start off with baseball. We're going to talk about softball. Eric Lopez, UCF not going to the NCAA tournament, but you were there in Tampa. You'll give us sort of recap of how everything went down. We're going to talk a little football offseason stuff, particularly not so much about what Nick Saban said, but about what Alabama did and what Texas did. We are also going to give out some well-deserved props to UCF men's golf, who are going back to the national championship tournament. We're also going to congratulate UCF track and field again on a job well done this season as they wrapped up their season, the American Athletic Conference Championships. And we got to give some well-deserved props as well to UCF rowing, the dominant UCF rowing team, winning a fourth consecutive American Athletic Conference championship at Cherry Hill, New Jersey this past weekend. As always, you can hit us up at blackandgoldbanneret.com. You can hit us up at Facebook at facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret. We are also on Twitter at UCF_Banneret. And you can hit us up individually on Twitter as well. Scream at us all you want at, me at Jeff_Sharon, Eric at Eric Lopez Elo, Brian at Spokes_Murphy. Don't forget, you can download this podcast via Google Play, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn. Gentlemen, let's dive right in. It is baseball, and here we come down the stretch we come with our final home series of the season, with Tulane coming in for 3 games, or at least what we think will be 3 games, because God knows what's going to happen with the weather. UCF was supposed to have a midweek at Jacksonville. That got canceled due to the weather. Remember, last weekend was also that the series with Oklahoma, that was that non-conference series because of the odd number of teams in the league. UCF drops 2 out of 3 after they won the first one. So UCF currently stands, when you look at the record, at 33-19, 11-10 in the conference. Brian Murphy, what do we think of this team now heading into the Tulane game?
I've said this before, but it's an important series. It's especially important after they lost 2 out of 3 to Oklahoma. Hot takes, by the way. Watch out. It's an important series to end the regular season. Hot takes.
We got lots of hot takes. Carry on.
Oh, yes. Mine was the most mild. The Tuesday cancellation in Jacksonville was the right call. It was good that they called it early because the weather was just brutal. But with that cancellation, UCF lost an opportunity to add a really nice, what would have been could have been another quality win against a top 25 RPI squad in Jacksonville. on the road, no less. If they had gotten that win, it's a really nice sort of thing you can stick in your NCAA tournament resume. So I think, although it was a good call and it was the right call to make it that early to cancel the game, I think, Coach Lovelady, it was a little perturbed that they didn't get the opportunity to go actually play that game and see if UCF can get another top 25 RPI win. As it is, they come back here. It's senior weekend against Tulane. And really, this is a series. I think I've said this now for like 3 or 4 consecutive weeks, but like UCF needs to win this series. Like, it's just the way they've gone. Like, they go up and they go down. It's kind of topsy-turvy. You don't know really what you're going to get from this team. I think me and Elo, Eric came out to a game this weekend when they were playing Oklahoma, and me and Eric were discussing, like, so what is this team exactly? Like, because it looks good. Like, on paper, it's like with its RPI and a lot of its numbers look good. And then you watch it play sometimes, you're like, man, that's ugly. And there was some defense especially this past weekend against Oklahoma. That was like, cover your eyes, like, shield your children away from this.
Hide your kids, hide your wife.
Hide your kids, hide your wife. They making errors out of everybody out here. I mean, it was rough. But you can like see like UCF was threatening in every game. Even the games they lost in the 9th inning, they brought the tying run to the plate. And then they had a really dramatic win on Friday night against Oklahoma, a 14-inning walk-off game in which they were down by 1 going to the bottom of the 14th, and they scored 2. You just don't know what you're going to get from this team from game to game. But this is a series they should win. Tulane's been struggling. They did win a series against Memphis, but Memphis is the bottom feeder in the conference. And this is a series at home that UCF really should take 2 out of 3. And probably at this point, they really need to before they head into the conference tournament.
The part that drives me ballistic about this team is that they never seem to be able to slam the door, right? They must be undefeated in their, or pretty close to undefeated in their first games of 3-game sets this year. But
they are. No, actually, it's fun. It's funny you asked that, Jeff. In their conference series this year, in just conference series, they are 8-0.
Unbelievable, really? Wow, I pegged that.
They are 8-0 in conference openers, series openers, and then after that, they are, I believe, like 3-10 or something really bad.
Oh,
something like really? It's not good. Like, yeah,
well, they're 11-10 in conference, so we can do the math there. They're 8-0, so that's 3 and 3. Well, maybe it's not all.
Well, before I get ahead of myself, maybe it's not all conference. There could be a couple of like non-conference series put in there as well. But like the point is, I think I wrote somewhere it was like 8-0 in the last 8 series openers, and then 5-11 after that. It's weird. It doesn't make any sense, much like baseball, which again doesn't make much sense. And it's just you see one team and then you see another team, but it's the same team. It's just a different day, and you just don't know what you're going to get. They're a box of chocolates, Jeffrey. They are a box of chocolates.
By the way, UCF is 7-0 in conference series openers.
Okay,
7-0 in conference series openers. So that means that they are 4-10
and 10
on Saturday. Well, ostensibly Saturday and Sunday games. So rotation, and this is the part of the season where you got to start setting this up, because the American Athletic Conference tournament starts on Tuesday, May 22nd. By the way, the field is set. Memphis has officially been eliminated as their 9th in the league, so they're and they can't get into the 8th spot. Which, by the way, Wichita State is going to be the 8th seed. It looks like, barring what happens. Well, notwithstanding what happens with Tulane, who's in the 7th slot right now. But Wichita, where's their RPI? I know I had that a hot second ago, but 39. Okay, so they're 39. They've actually dropped 8 spots in the RPI, but still they're in the top 40, and they're the dead last team in the tournament. They would likely be playing Houston, at least if the tournament started now. So
who has an RPI of 51?
Right, go figure that. So so you're right. UCF does
tells
get
you how bogus the RPI is. Whatever.
But here we are. I mean, is it any less bogus than the 15 other rankings that we have to pay attention to?
I mean, the RPI, while confusing and sort of nebulous, is still important when it comes to factoring in like a team's tournament resume. Like Houston, because they're at 51, and UCF, which after the series lost to Oklahoma, is at 34, I believe. Like UCF is ostensibly in one way in a better position, because even though Houston's on top of the conference, and they've got the conference regular season tournament championship, UCF has a higher RPI, which does factor in a lot, as sort of difficult as it is to understand.
Yeah.
So it's still a big deal.
I agree with you, Murph. Now, I think two things. I think this is why the Tulane series is critical, because Tulane's been down this year. I don't know where their RPI is, but it's not very good.
They're in the 90s, I think.
They're 81.
Right. So I think if you lose this series, that RPI is going to drop, number one. And number two, I think from what I've seen, I think UCF's in good shape to be in the tournament. But if you lose to Tulane 2 out of 3, I think that puts extra pressure now to do well in the conference tournament, because you could play yourself out very easily. So I think that's why the Tulane series is big. As far as Houston's concerned, the fact that you win the regular season time, this is where I disagree with going with RPI. I think the RPI, sometimes the committee uses it way too much as a Bible, which it's not. It should be a tool, not the tool. An example is Houston. If Houston wins the regular season title of the 4th best conference in your sport, like the American is in baseball, you should be in. I don't care what your RPI is. I think it's a joke. At some point, you have to have eye tests, and results on the field should matter. And if you're good enough to win your 4th best league, or even 3rd, depending on the day we look at, you should be in the tournament regardless if your RPI is 50 or not. I think the baseball committee will figure that out, unlike other committees that are incompetent, like softball. But
Eric's in a mood tonight. Watch out.
I mean, I've dealt with incompetence here for the last week, and what comes with the softball committee. So I mean, I'm a little chippy about it, but I think that's the way I would look at it. I think the American is a 5-bid league, right? I feel at this hour, Houston should be in. And tell me if you stop me when you think I'm wrong, Murph.
I think you're right. Yeah.
East Carolina is going to be in and might even host.
Yep.
Connecticut's in.
Yep.
USF is in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think UCF's that 5th team. I think Wichita State is the team that would be out right now. And they would have to, I think, go deep into the conference tournament to get back into the mix in the NCAA. But I think this league should be a 5-bid league, at least. And I think as long as UCF doesn't slip up, and I think to your point, that's why this Tulane series is big. I don't think it helps their resume, but it could hurt the resume, right?
Right, exactly. And the thing about Wichita State is, while they have a nice RPI, you can't go 7-13-1 in conference and have a really good case to be in the tournament.
Yeah, unless you're in college softball, but that's all.
Well, we're gonna get there. You're gonna have your time to shine. You're gonna have the time to shine, baby. Jeff's got to put that last on the show so you can tease it. You got to tease the heck out of that.
Well, I just did, because we're going to do that next. But anyway, carry on.
Yes. So, and that's why, like, the Jacksonville cancellation on Tuesday, I know you couldn't do anything about it, but, like, it's pretty big. Like, Jacksonville is an RPI 21. Like, it could have been a really nice road win to have this point in the season. And yeah, that makes, and to anybody who thinks that UCF is going to be, kind of locked into a 2 or 3 seed in the regional, like, no, like, this team is still very much on the bubble. They need to win this series against Tulane, especially since it's at home. It's your senior weekend, and it's Tulane. Like, they are a struggling team. They have the worst ERA in the conference. They have 24 players who are underclassmen. It's a very young, inexperienced team that really has a hard time pitching. The bats need to pick it up for UCF, which has been a tricky proposition for most of the season for this team. And then they need to do a little bit of damage in the conference tournament if they want to feel comfortable. Because right now, I really don't feel comfortable saying, like, this team's in the tournament. I really don't. I think they're more on the bubble than people realize, but they can change that with a series win.
Speaking of things that are on the bubble, the weather for the series coming. We've had some kooky weather here in Central Florida the past week. We're in that transition phase where we go from the sort of not quite summer to the summer, and we're expecting showers basically and thunderstorms potentially all day during the daylight hours from like 8 a.m. till about 7 p.m. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Now, this is a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series. There haven't been any announcements as of yet. We're recording this on Wednesday night. There haven't been any announcements yet about time changes for the games. But what are the concerns right now? Because we're looking at 6:30 Thursday, Friday, and then 1 on Saturday. I mean, I think we're going to get some delays here, possibly maybe about an hour and a half on Thursday and Friday, but Saturday is another thing entirely. So what based on what we've seen, where we're expecting thunder showers basically all day into the evening, what's the situation right now?
I wish I had something concrete to give you on that. I mean, I asked Coach Lovelady about that this afternoon, Wednesday afternoon, and he just said that he and his coaches have been basically not getting any sleep and have been, updating weather apps on their phone constantly to try to figure out what's going to happen. And I believe it, because they don't want to play a doubleheader before the conference tournament. They really want to avoid that at all costs.
Right.
And so, well, what windows do we have here to play baseball that's not constantly interrupted? And he was very, very clear that you might see games that were scheduled for 6:30 at night, as the Thursday and Friday games are. They might move those up to even 10 or 11 a.m. in the morning, depending on if it's best for both these teams. The conference has sent out an email to every team saying that we know that some of you are dealing with bad weather this weekend. You need to do whatever you can to get these games in. They're going to do what they can, but when you look at this forecast, and I know it's fickle, like it's Florida, it can change in a matter of seconds because it's Florida. You really don't see a window where, like, okay, well, we can at least depend on those 3 hours right there to get a game in. I don't really see that right now. There's nothing really there unless they want to move it up really early or maybe even really late, I would
say like 8 o'clock. That's like, 8 p.m.
After the sun sets and after you get a little bit of the atmospheric heating out of the air, a little bit of the moisture out of the air, with the sun being down, maybe you could play then, because obviously you won't have as much tumult in the weather. But again, like that could mean that you start a game at 8 o'clock and then you're on the field till midnight, and God forfend if that's on a Friday night, and then they got to come back and play at 1. They will do that just to get the games in, but it's not exactly ideal.
Here's the problem that they're going to run into. So the tournament is in Clearwater. It starts Tuesday with 2 games at 3 and 7. Now, UCF right now, the first game 1 at 3 p.m. on Tuesday, May 22nd, is the 4-5 game. Right now, UCF would be the 5, playing UConn as the 4. So,
wow.
Like you said, it's a quick turnaround, possibly, if the standings hold up. Heck, even if UCF moves up, and I'll have to check who UConn is playing this weekend, because I haven't seen. But yeah, if you can't get that Saturday game in, and that's a problem. Like I think Lovelady hasn't even announced the starter for Saturday. He's got Finn Frock on Thursday, Chris Williams on Friday, and then officially right now, this is a tweet as of 13 hours before we recorded this, TBA for Saturday. So
yeah, and I talked to him about that, and if I had to guess, it's probably still Joe Sheridan on that Saturday, but no one wants to say anything there because really, and I know this is like the cliche of all cliches, but like they're taking it one game at a time. And so if that means that they got to spend guys like Thad Ward and JJ Montgomery and Jordan Spicer on Thursday and Friday, and even Joe Sheridan, they got to use Joe Sheridan early in the week. They'll figure out who starts. They'll figure out who starts Saturday, probably on Saturday or Friday night. And I think that's really more than anything. It sounds like Joe is healthy enough to pitch if called upon, but they just don't want to put out a starter for Saturday right now because they just don't know what kind of position their bullpen is going to be in at that point.
So
they're not going to say anything.
Sorry, Brian. What about Tuesday? What do you think they'll do on Tuesday if they're in that 4-5 game?
I feel like right now, even though Cree wasn't the great in that on Friday against Oklahoma, I feel like he'd still be your number one starter. Maybe they take Chris Williams because he has more experience. Remember, Cree's coming back off the shoulder surgery. But as far as like who's your best pitcher right now, well, considering that Joe has really struggled for weeks, Chris is coming off some shoulder/pec muscle soreness. Cree is probably your best starter. So I'd probably say they'd throw Cree in game 1 of the tournament. And we'll see. If they can get to the 3 seed, I'm sure they'd rather take the game. They'll take the extra day off and play Wednesday against the 6th than be the early game on Tuesday, be the 4-5.
I should note that UConn is playing East Carolina in stores this weekend.
That's a big series.
Yeah, it is.
It's a big series.
Yeah, huge series. And here's the other thing that's why Tuesday is so critical. If you end up in that 4-5 matchup right now, so UCF is a game back of UConn for 4th. And then USF so UConn is 12-9, UCF's 11-10 in the league. USF is 12-8-1, which puts them a game and a half, basically, half a game ahead of UConn for that 3 spot. But here's why the Tuesday game is so critical. If you win that 4-5 game, you don't have to play till Thursday,
right?
You get the day off in the afternoon. Yeah, you get a whole day off. So. Whereas on the other hand, if you're a 3, you can wait till Wednesday, and then if you win that game, you play again on Thursday. If you lose that game, you play on Thursday morning. So it might be beneficial for UCF's arms if they're in that 4-5. Well, obviously it would be beneficial, but would you rather? Okay, so we'll end on this. Would you rather play in the 4-5? And get a W there and have the day off and not play again until Thursday, or get to the 3, play the 6 seed, which right now would be Cincinnati, who UCF is, whom, by the way, UCF is tied with in the standings. And then, if you get through that game, you would play on Thursday night. Would you want that day off?
Yeah. I would. And so I know we're throwing a bunch of numbers out there and people are maybe probably a little confused about it. What's this 4-5-3-6 thing? Like,
you're welcome, UCF, everybody.
Yeah, I know. Welcome to the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. We're throwing numbers at the wall.
Well, it's a double. Well, I mean, just real quick, it's a double elimination tournament, and the first games are seeded, 1-8, 2-7, 3-6, 4-5.
Right. And so UCF is the 5 right now, and that means they play Tuesday. If they go to the 3 or the 6 seed, they play Wednesday. I'd rather have them play Wednesday because I feel like this, the way this team is going right now, they get into their bullpen pretty early, especially with how Chris Williams has not been at full strength and Joe has really struggled. They get into their bullpen early, which really taxes it. And so I think you'd want an extra day off before the tournament, and then you get in the tournament starting on Wednesday, and then you sort of treat the next few days sort of like another weekend series where you can have Cree starting this Thursday and then have him starting next Wednesday instead of having to start Tuesday. You get your rotation set up like another weekend series the following week. So I'd rather have the day off. I'd rather have the Tuesday off and then play 3 consecutive days, 4 or 5, considering how long this tournament lasts. This thing lasts till Sunday.
Right. So, we may have an emergency podcast on Monday night, depending upon what happens. But, but I'm just breaking that to you guys right now. So I just wanted to make that point. All right. So
you mean the Monday night after the day of the selection show?
No. Well, maybe that too. But maybe previewing, where UCF is in the American Athletic Conference.
Oh, okay.
Tournament. So.
No, I was just looking. By the way, real quick.
Didn't mean to spring that on you here, like live on the air.
Quick, okay. Yeah, that was a quick administrative meeting, guys, live on air.
Yeah.
D1 Baseball has UCF in. They have them as a 3 seed in Gainesville to take on Jacksonville. What's fascinating about that is they had Kendall Rogers and company. They have Stetson as a host, which is an interesting development there. And then Baseball America, which has decided to put their projections on the paywall. So we've had to scramble to break that code, if you will. According to Baseball America, they've got UCF actually in Raleigh at NC State as the host, with UCF playing Kentucky on that one.
Where would they put East Carolina on that one? They also have
Stetson as a host. They also have Stetson as a host as a 12 seed. Now they have USF going to Stetson. So that's going to be the interesting thing, guys. As we monitor this, if you're UCF, you want to try to build yourself in a way to get to DeLand, right? That's the goal. I mean, now Stetson's really good. But if you can get the DeLand from a fan interest standpoint at the closer drive, I don't really buy the Raleigh thing. Although college baseball, I give credit, they actually have creativity, unlike other sports. But
they would put UCF in Raleigh. Where would they put East Carolina?
Well, East Carolina's hosting.
Oh, they would have
in Greenville.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have East Carolina hosting.
They would have
now.
ECU and NC State hosting. Wow. Okay.
According to Baseball America. And I'm actually going to try and we're going to try and get a baseball guy from maybe Baseball America or D1 next on our next episode, whether it be the emergency podcast or the regular normal podcast. We'll get some try to get you ready for that. But I think it's important. I mean, if you believe that Stetson's going to host, you could have Stetson, Florida, and Florida State host. I personally believe that UCF is in play for Florida and for Stetson. And I think UCF and USF both might be fighting to go to DeLand. I could definitely see one of them ending up in DeLand. Don't you agree with that, Murph?
I think one of them will. And I've seen other projections that have UCF even going to Fayetteville, Arkansas, where Arkansas would be the host. You know, if you're UCF, I feel like you should probably put your odds on playing somewhere in Florida. And if that's going to be the case, and I think it probably will be in the end if they make it, you really want to go to DeLand more than you want to go to Gainesville or Tallahassee. And that's not just due to proximity. Like, I'm sorry, but Florida's probably the best team in the nation right now. And Florida State, I'd still say, is better than Stetson, even though it's close. Stetson's really good. They've got a kid who's going to be a top 20 pick in the draft, but in Logan Gilbert for Stetson. But you'd rather go to DeLand because they are a little weaker than Florida State. And, yeah, it's 40 minutes up the road.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing too. It's Dick Hauser. I mean, UCF's had enough of Dick Hauser. I mean, it's never worked at Dick Hauser. No, I mean, it's a great ballpark. It's just UCF's had bad memories there. I mean, going back to as recent as last year. I mean, all the years. It's just over and over again. Whereas DeLand, you know, Merchant Park, I think UCF fans, I'd like to think, would turn out for that, even though they didn't turn out for Oklahoma, because for whatever reason we decided not to show up against Oklahoma Big 12 program that has one of the best college baseball players / quarterbacks in Kyler Murray, but that's not good enough, I guess, to draw fans. But I'd like to think he's amazing. Can I make this statement real quick about Kyler Murray? I think he's the best college baseball player I've seen play UCF since Anthony Rendon at Rice. I mean, that kid's unbelievable. And I don't know what he's supposedly going to be the starting quarterback for Oklahoma this fall, but how is he not like a really super high draft pick in this upcoming draft? Is he eligible, Murph? He's eligible, right, for this upcoming draft?
Yeah, he's a redshirt sophomore. So, yes, he is. And so, I mean, not to get way off the tracks here, but that is sort of our MO. Let's get way off the tracks here. Kyler Murray, center fielder / quarterback for Oklahoma, is considered to be a top 50 prospect according to MLB.com. But is also in line to be Baker Mayfield's heir apparent at Oklahoma. He played in the spring game, and then he played in the baseball game that night. He's that kind of dude. He's also very short, but he's stocky. He's got muscles, and he's got tremendous bat whip. He's got great power. His contact rate has really gone way up, and he really, really, really troubled UCF all weekend long. Ate them alive for, I think, 5 for 13 with 8 RBIs, a couple of home runs, both of which were just stunners to UCF early on Saturday and Sunday. And then after the game on Sunday, Greg Loveletty basically said, I think I'm paraphrasing here, but he just said, it's crazy. The kid plays baseball 4 months out of the year. Yep. Probably doesn't think about baseball until after the bowl game in January, and he's the best player on the field. It doesn't make any sense.
No, that's exactly what he said, and I'm fascinated to see what he does. I was super impressed with seeing him live in person. He was the best player on that field, and I don't know, guys. What would you do if you're him? Do you kind of play football this fall and give baseball another year? Because I guess he could be always redrafted next year.
He's only a sophomore. He can come back for 2 more years.
Right. Or does he go ahead and cash in and try baseball? And if it doesn't work out, he could be like Jordan Akins, just go back down the road and play football. Because I think his future is in baseball. I don't think it's in football. I think he's too small for the NFL.
Yeah, 5'11". Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't see it. I mean, the kid's amazing.
He looks like Johnny Manziel because he's got amazing speed. Like he's all over the field. He's jitterbugging and just breaking ankles. But as a quarterback, as a thrower of the football, he's still very raw. And again, he's only about 5'10". Yeah. He's
got better potential as a baseball player than as a football player. That's right. I'm going to go where I'm maximized the most, and I'm going baseball if I'm him.
Yeah, no, and that's significant because Oklahoma will open the season against FAU. And FAU obviously plays UCF. So that's significant when you talk about a UCF opponent. It talks about, the All Access Bowl in the New Year's Six, because I think FAU is a legitimate contender for that as well with UCF. So, I mean, it is a rippling effect based on what he decides to do. Because it's funny you mentioned that he's kind of reminds you of Manziel, because he went to A&M under Kevin Sumlin to be the heir apparent to Johnny Manziel, and it never panned out there for whatever the reason. Then he transferred to Oklahoma, and the reason he went to Oklahoma is because Oklahoma allowed him to play baseball unlike other schools. So
right. And he really wanted to play baseball. I will say this. I told you he's a top 50 prospect, according to MLB.com. The slot value for even the 50th pick in the draft is about $1.4 million. He could get that 3 weeks from now if he wants.
Done. There you go. Sign me up.
Wow.
There you have it. Why not? All right. So, again, UCF Baseball, just to put a bow on this real quick, against Tulane. 6:30 on Thursday and Friday, Saturday at 1, and then the American Athletic Championship starts Tuesday. Stay tuned to our Twitter feed at UCF_Banneret. We might do a little emergency podcast to preview the AAC tournament if UCF is starting that tournament early. Speaking of tournaments, before we take a break, we're going to go over to softball. And Eric Lopez, it is your chance to well, you've probably already done some unleashing as well on the In the Circle podcast, which is the podcast that you and our friend Victor Anderson do a fabulous job with on Fast Pitch News. UCF Softball finishes their season 34-22 in the American Athletic Conference tournament. They lose in the first round to Memphis. 3-0 was the final. We talked about how much of a problem Memphis would be. They're the top hitting team in the conference. Turned out to be that exactly that. 4 American Athletic Conference teams made it into the NCAA tournament. UCF was not one of them. However, Tulsa, who won the championship, is in. USF, who couldn't wrap it up on their home field, is in. Wichita State is in. Wichita's in the Fayetteville, Arkansas bracket, and going back there, Tulsa's in the Norman, Oklahoma bracket with the 4-seed Oklahoma. USF's in Gainesville playing number 2, Florida. And then who am I missing here, Eric?
You said Wichita State's obviously in Fayetteville. Yep. USF's in Gainesville, like always, because that's what they like to do in softball. They're in Gainesville as a 3-seed. Houston is in Baton Rouge. They'll take on Louisiana Lafayette.
And that's that's the LSU regional. LSU's the 11.
Yeah.
So UCF unfortunately gets left out. I mean, they had, it comes back to some of those games like you always told us. It's an at bat here, a pitch here, a pitch there, and things go differently. And then all of a sudden, UCF could have been a 37-38 win team with 15 wins in conference regular season champion. In a pretty good year, but nonetheless, this is where they end up as they finish as they finish out of the party. So, here's the thing. What's the final evaluation there?
Well, they're 2 swings away from winning the 4th strongest league. If you think about it, remember that Wichita State doubleheader? I know you texted me right after. I mean, that was
2 walk-off homers in the same day.
That's what I would think back to is the difference. If you win those 2 games.
Yeah. That and the UConn series.
Yeah, but, UConn – I mean, here's the thing. UConn's not bad. I mean, this league is good, and one of the problems that we have right now in softball in our sport, and you're right, I've covered this now all week on fastpitchnews.com, obviously with the selection show on Sunday night, is that the committee that is involved are incompetent and have no clue what the hell they're watching. The sport is not what it was 20 years ago when there was like 8 to 10 teams that are very good. This sport is deeper than it's ever been, and they are slow to realize that, or they're not smart enough to figure it out, or they don't care.
All 13 teams from the SEC got into the tournament.
Which is including a team that bought themselves basically into the field. Missouri finished 1 game over 500 in part because they bought out Wichita State literally about 2 weeks ago, right before their games, literally bought them out for $5,000 so they can add Arkansas Pine Bluff so they can stay above 500, basically. And that's how they stayed above 500. And the committee chairman, when was asked about that, said that was a non-issue. A committee
find that
chairman
hard to
who
believe.
works at a university. No, that's her exact quote. That's embarrassing. That is embarrassing for the sport. It's embarrassing. What it tells you is that they don't care about the sport. That's the problem.
Can I ask you a question about that, by the way?
Yeah.
If you're Wichita State, why say yes?
I don't think it was a matter of saying yes. I think there was a clause in the contract that allowed Missouri to say, hey, we're opting out of this contract and we're going to pay you. Here's your $5,000. I don't think it was a question of yes.
So it wasn't whether or not
Like,
Wichita agreed to it. It's just a clause in the contract that
correct.
that Missouri could just exercise without asking Wichita State is what you're saying.
Right. Now
Okay.
you could question Wichita State for even having that as part of the contract.
That's what I would do. But then again, they're probably holding you over the barrel on that too. So,
well, I think here's the thing. In their situation, Missouri, you want to get Missouri to come to your place. If that's what they tell you, then you take it. You're not thinking the last thing you're thinking is that they're actually going to buy you out of it a week before it, like literally 5 days before that game. Type of situation. So, that's been discussed. I think the thing that's embarrassing is that Missouri's even in the field to begin with. First of all, they're a number 2 seed, which is hilarious. They're a number 2 seed, a game 1 over 500. Let me ask you both gentlemen this, because you both follow other sports. In what other sport would that kind of behavior be tolerated? It wouldn't. And I made this comment on the Fast Pitch News podcast that created some stir. And my quote exactly was, this crap doesn't fly in men's sports. It doesn't. And you can come to your conclusions on that. But that's why it is. We talk about how women should get a fair shake and get to sports. When you pull crap like that and you endorse that kind of behavior, then you're not going to get the respect. You're not going to get any credibility from casual people. My phone was blowing up all Sunday night, Monday morning, talking to me from people that don't even follow the sport, asking me, why the hell is this team even in the field to begin with? And I don't have a good answer for them. It's because, A, they have a high RPI and they treat that like the Bible, which it shouldn't. And number 2, there is a biasness. I think there is a belief that there is a biasness towards the Southeastern Conference. It does not help when the 4-letter network treats that conference like the end-all, be-all when it comes to softball. If you guys think that there's a biasness towards the football side, it's nothing compared to what it is in softball. The difference is it doesn't get covered as much, so they just kind of look the other way.
I'm just curious as to why the SEC bias and not the Pac-12 bias, because the Pac-12
I think some people would – no, well, listen. I think there's truth to that. Oregon State made the field 2 games over 500, and they're a 2 seed as well. How embarrassing is that? Like, you don't get that in other sports. Like, you won't get a college baseball team to be 1 game or 2 games over 500 and be a 2 seed. They would probably be at best, maybe a 3 seed or a 4 seed, not make the field without even blinking. Which is hilarious. They have the 2 worst records outside of Prairie View A&M in the field of 64. It's embarrassing for the sport. And it pisses me off because I try to convince people to follow the sport. I convinced my good friend Trace Troutko, for example, from Nightline, come follow UCF Softball. I try to tell Brandon. I try to tell Brian. I'm just using guys as an example. Obviously, it's a more generic example of other people. But when crap like this happens, I can't look these guys in the face. I can't look at them in the face and say, cover softball, because it's embarrassing. It reminds me, and Murph can help me out with this. Me and Murph are wrestling fans, and we get some crap about why you're a wrestling fan. And when they do a stupid angle that is clearly stupid, and somebody looks at you, is like, why do you follow that? And I can't answer that question. That's how I feel about softball right now.
Jason Jordan. I think that's what it.
Yes, when the WWE comes up with a storyline that he is Kurt Angle's father, that's very difficult to justify being a fan of. Yes, that's one of the many, many examples. But I
should mention, by the way, that that in the, and I know how much you love this, Eric Lopez, but both those 2 schools that you mentioned, Mizzou and Oregon State, neither of them were ranked in either the ESPN.com USA Softball nor the USA Today NFCA coaches polls. Yet they both had RPIs in the top 30. In fact, it was Mizzou. Mizzou finished 24th, and Oregon State finished 26th.
26, yeah. And they get it. Meanwhile, Florida Gulf Coast, who has a 38 RPI, is finished as second in the league that is the 6th strongest conference in the sport, better than the Big Ten, gets passed over for a team like Wisconsin, who has finished 7th in the Big Ten in the 7th best conference with a 50 RPI. I mean,
well, yeah. Well, I mean, you know what the argument's going to be, though. It's going to be,
what?
well, you're that's an ASUN team.
Right.
Look at the competition, right? Kennesaw State, by the way, won the ASUN.
Correct.
They're the 34th RPI, 39 and 15 this year, but that's going to be their argument every single time. I don't know what the
numbers. Look at the numbers. The ASUN was rated better than the Big Ten. That's fine, but look at.
But that's according to who, though?
The RPI.
Okay. So here's
conference RPI.
Here's the thing:
the ASUN is the 6th best conference, and the Big Ten was 7.
Okay, but we can't. But here's, and we'll get into this with, and I think we talk about this with baseball too, is that you can't complain about the teams with the team RPI that they rely on the team RPI too much, and then point at the conference RPI and say, "Look, the conference is better." You know what I mean?
What I'm saying is, no, that's fine. But Florida Gulf Coast had a higher RPI than them. Had a better win percentage than them, finished higher in the conference. Like at some point, be consistent. Don't be a moving target. Like to baseball, for example, the fact that we're talking about Stetson hosting, Coastal Carolina is hosted, that never happens in softball. There's a clear bias that's there, and I'm not saying Florida Gulf Coast is the end all be all, but I'm just saying it's hilarious. Like UCF, okay, the reason they didn't get in was because their RPI is 63. Okay, that's the argument. Okay, I get you that, and there's certainly a couple losses that hurt that RPI for sure. You realize UCF has beaten 3 teams in the top 25 right now in the polls? They beat Florida, they beat Long Beach State, and they've beaten Hofstra. My argument is, instead of taking them out, they have more wins in the top 50 and the top 25 than, for example, Texas, who's in the field. They have more wins than Wisconsin. Instead of using the RPI as a reason to keep them out, why don't you use the RPI as a reason to drop them all the way to a 4 seed? Who says you can't be a 4 seed? That's the thing, that there's no creativity. It's almost like the end-all, be-all. It is what it is. It just boggles the mind to me how they look at this stuff and are so hypocritical. Pittsburgh finished 2nd, okay? Pittsburgh finished 2nd in the ACC. 48 RPI, better than Wisconsin. The ACC was the 5th strongest conference. Got left out over Wisconsin and over Missouri and Oregon State, 2 teams that combined for 3 games over 500. We reward losing and mediocrity in softball. So that's why it doesn't deserve to get any.
I don't know if it's that so much as they reward potential television ratings. That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, that certainly is out there. That perception's out there that television has a lot of control. You're not the first to bring that up, and unfortunately, I can't really argue with you right now. That's why I'm embarrassed for the sport. I'm disgusted with it, and it's nothing to do with UCF not being in it. Look, they like I said, they had some bad losses, and they know that they, at the end of the day. It is what it is. I just think that for this sport to grow and be respected and have credibility, you can't have this crap. This crap will not happen in college baseball. It doesn't happen in college basketball, but it happens in the sport. So don't cry 6-7 months from now when you complain that cornhole is on your channel instead of softball, or you're not getting coverage on SportsCenter, or that people aren't covering your games. Why would they? Because your sport's a joke when it does things like this, or like you did last year when you had a team that was number 3 in the country going into the final week of the regular season, and you don't even have them host after having them as the number 8 seed 2 weeks prior when you announced your they did the 2-week thing where they announced who would be your top 16 seeds if the season ended today. Minnesota was number 8 in the committee's list. They won out, they won the Big Ten tournament, and they somehow magically didn't host. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, that's still a crime from last year that no one has paid for yet, and
we need people in the committee that are qualified and know what the hell they're doing. I don't think they have that. They don't.
Who would you put there? Like, would you put more coaches? Would you put more former players? What would you do?
I think you would have more coaches. Yes, there's only 2 coaches currently in the committee. And I believe they're both in the Ivy League, which is kind of hilarious. Like, are they just in there because they coach at a very smart conference?
Yeah, they're smart.
That's why. Yeah. Okay, well, they're not smart enough. I think you have that. I think you would do what baseball does, which you have scouts from each region that can scout the region and tell you your opinion. Like I've told this story. Last year, St. John's got into the baseball selection because there was a scout in the Northeast that they, gave them their high approval that St. John's was the best team in the Northeast that they saw. They were better than even Connecticut. In fact, Some believe that St. John's got in over Connecticut because of that, even though Connecticut's RPI was 34. I think you just need more people that watch games and share opinion. And I think there's enough people that we have in the sport that watch the games and eye test and say, you know what, this team's really good, and take their opinion. Here's an idea. If I'm a committee member, I would call coaches up and say, hey, what do you think about this team? What do you think about that team that you played? What jumps out at you? You know, instead of crunching into a table and say, okay, which team can bust 400 miles? And we call it a day, and let's have lunch at Carrabba's. That's, you know, I mean, give me a break. These players and coaches work their ass off from fall to spring. Okay. We're going to have a coaching carousel this upcoming season, like anything else. Jobs, players are expected to perform. Coaches are expected to perform. I don't think we're asking a lot of a committee to do a little extra homework and follow the sport closely. I don't think I'm asking for a lot.
Send your hate mail to Eric Lopez Elo on Twitter for the latest on the UCF softball, on the NCAA softball tournament.
They already do that on fastpitchnews.com. Let me just say this about UCF. 34 wins, real quick. 34 wins. Great year considering you had 2 seniors. You had some injuries to deal with. I actually think, and this is the funny thing about the coaching awards, Ken Erickson and great staff, they won the award because they won the league, and that's cool. By the way, how stupid is our committee? USF won the regular season title in the 4th best league in the sport, and they were one of the last 4 teams in. Like, how asinine is it? Like, can you imagine if we did that in basketball, where what's the 4th strongest league in college basketball right now? It would be what, the Pac-12 or whatever. Let's say like Arizona.
Well, this year, I believe the ACC was 3rd,
right?
So probably the SEC.
Okay, fair. So by the softball's theory, the Auburn Tigers would be one of the last teams in, based on that. That's how ridiculous it is. Like, if you win your 4th strongest league, you should not be one of your last 4 teams in. I'm sorry. Do your homework on that. I don't care what your RPI is. And they could say, well, their RPI was in the low 40s. Get the hell out of here. They beat the Big Ten regular season champions in Michigan. Thankfully, our league did get 4 teams in, and I do give credit to the American Conference and the offices for pushing that narrative and pushing the results on the field, that they have beaten quality teams. And I think that's a big part of why the American Conference got 4 teams in. And I think it's a big part why the ASUN didn't get the teams in, so they don't market that. But that's all their story. Back to UCF. Young teams got the number 30 recruiting class in the country coming in this fall that's going to add to this team. I think I told you, Jeff, when we previewed the season, I felt that if certain things broke right, they could make the tournament. But if not, they probably would miss, but that it's a year away. The team's a year away. And I feel the same way. Unfortunately, a couple things didn't break right, and they didn't make the field, but I think it's about next season. I think this staff did a heck of a job considering some of the limitations they have. If I was in the administrative side, and I know people say I'm biased, but I think they actually did one of their best jobs they've done in a while, and I think they deserve an extension, and I think they're going to be really good for years to come here.
Yeah. Well, I think that they've had the right talent that's been really young to this point, like you said. But now that you're starting to see them come through, here's the thing that's key. You lose only 2 seniors this year who, granted, had their contributions, but but I would say that neither of them were megastars per se.
Right.
And so your best players are still ones that are coming back next year. So if Renee can find, again, that second pitcher that she can throw out there that can take the load off of Aaliyah White, or even if you find a pitcher that's good enough that can supersede Aaliyah White, things could get really interesting. But nonetheless, we're going to have to wait till next year to find that out. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll do a little football. Eric is going to continue to be. Eric is going to get mad at me again, and then I want to spend some time congratulating UCF rowing because guys. Telling you right now, they're the most dominant team on campus. No question about it. So, plus plenty more to talk about, including men's golf as well. So stick around. We'll be right back. The Black and Gold Banneret Podcast is brought to you by the Unger Real Estate Group, powered by eXp Realty. Sam Unger and his team proudly serve Orange, Seminole, and Lake counties, specializing in buying, selling, and new construction. Sam is a proud UCF graduate, class of 2006, and he's such a dedicated Knight fan that right now If you work with him as your realtor, he will donate a portion of his commission to the UCF Football Excellence Fund in your name. So if you're ready to buy a new home or sell your current home, upgrade or downsize, Sam and his team have you covered so you can find the right home at the right price in the right location. So give him a call right now at 407-790-9957. Again, that's 407-790-9957. Or visit on the web at WeSellOrlando.net. Again, that's WeSellOrlando.net. You can also reach them on Facebook at facebook.com/WeSellOrlando. Get in touch with the Unger Real Estate Group today and make finding your dream home a reality.
Hello, Night Nation. I'm Andrew Fegley.
And I'm Trey Strelko. Where are we? This isn't our usual spot.
It looks like we've landed in the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of those guys.
You know, Nightline has UCF sports covered.
Week in and week out, we bring you interviews with newsmakers and in-depth analysis of UCF sports.
Subscribe to our weekly podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Be sure to subscribe to Nightline on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter at UCF_Nightline.
Trace, can we go back to the 1148 studios now and start working on our next all-new Nightline?
How do we get out of here? Go Knights!
Charge on.
Now back to you guys in the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
All right, welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, Brian Murphy with you here. We got some kudos to pass out, but before we do, just a reminder, blackandgoldbanneret.com is where you can find all of our latest content. Subscribe to our podcast on Google Play, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and tune in. Don't forget us on Facebook at facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret. And Twitter at UCF_Banneret as well. All right, some kudos to pass along. Men's golf got the job done this week. So they were in the regionals, which were played at Reunion Resort down in Kissimmee. So UCF hosted, and UCF came out and took care of business. They finished in second place to Florida, and they are one of the 5 teams that qualify for the NCAA Division I Championship, which will be held May 25th through Sunday, May 27th. There's 3 days of stroke play, and then the top 15 teams and 9 individuals not on an advancing team will be determined. And that final day of 18-hole stroke play will be Monday, May 28th. 72 and the top 8 teams advance to match play, as well as a 72-hole individual champion. Interesting format, because the national champion will be determined by a match play format that will consist of quarters and semis on Tuesday, May 29th, followed by the finals on Wednesday, May 30th. They will be hosted by Oklahoma State. But how about Bryce Waller and his guys getting the job done once again? So they are advancing to the NCAA championships. The 54-hole score for UCF, by the way, was 30 under par. Second lowest 54-hole total in school history. It's the 9th time UCF has made it to the NCAA championship. And by the way, UCF outclassed 7 of the 8 ranked teams in the tournament in the regional, including number 5 and top seeded Vandy, North Carolina, USF, Kent State, Arizona, Purdue, and Colorado State. Some of the other schools that will be heading to Oklahoma State along with UCF include, Texas, Duke, North Carolina State, Augusta University, which, by the way, that's just not fair. You play in Augusta. UNLV, Northwestern, Texas Tech, Oklahoma. UNF is advancing. Alabama will be there. Oregon will be there. Clemson, Baylor, UCLA, Kentucky, Texas A&M, a number of schools. So be on the lookout for that. Congrats once again to Bryce Waller for that outstanding achievement. Also wanted to pass along, again, congratulations to UCF women's tennis on an excellent season that came to an end in the second round in Coral Gables in the NCAA tournament. They actually defeated FIU 4-3 in their first turn.
Which I think was their first ever. Was that their first ever? I read that.
Yes,
first
ever
tournament win?
NCAA tournament win for UCF women's tennis in program history. They came up short 4-3 against the hosts from Miami, but nonetheless, Brian Kaniko's team finishes 20-5, 14-1 at home this year. Still just remarkable. Great job by that team. Future is very bright for them, and a job well done this season for UCF women's tennis. Now, here's the big one that I wanted to talk about, which was UCF rowing. They went to Cherry Hill for the American Athletic Conference Championships last Saturday, and they took care of business once again. Their fourth consecutive American Athletic Conference tournament, or American Athletic Conference championship, I should say. 7 UCF rowers made the all-conference team from that squad. Second varsity 4 finished in second place. Third varsity 4 finished in second place. The varsity 8 UCF finished in second, and varsity 4 finished in second. So even though UCF had all those second place finishes, it came into the second varsity 8, and they did the job by 3 seconds ahead of Sacramento State, which, by the way, Sacramento State is in the American for rowing. So that consistent performance, 1 win, 4 second place finishes, gives UCF the victory. And then the top varsity 8 boat cruised to a 4th consecutive varsity 8 title. 209 points for UCF, which pushed them over the top to get to the NCAA. So the NCAA championships will be held here in Florida, in Sarasota, at Nathan Pedersen Park, May 25th through the 27th. UCF gets the automatic bid there. Let's give it up for Becky Kramer and her squad. They work so hard down on Lake Pickett every single morning. They're up so early, and let's also give it up for their student athletes, because they really are student athletes down there. You talk about scholarships and stuff. Rowing does not get a lot of scholarships, and we talked about the number of people who are involved in UCF rowing, in all those 4 boats and 8 boats. Aside from football, rowing is the largest UCF sport in terms of the number of people on the team. The overwhelming percentage of them are basically like we would call walk-ons, right? And they got the job done once again. So give it up for UCF rowing and Becky
Dynasty,
Kramer.
right?
Total dynasty.
Dynasty.
Yeah.
Hey,
it qualifies 4 in a row. Like, imagine being a senior on that team. You've never lost.
Yeah, no, it's funny. Obviously, I had a chance to broadcast the softball championships all week, the quarters and the semis for the digital network. And as you knew, Jeff, obviously it was a busy weekend. Softball was going on, the track and field was going on,
track and field,
and the rowing was going on. And the people in the conference, those people telling me like, rowing, UCF's going to win that again. Like, by how much? It's almost like a foregone conclusion. It's kind of like the Golden State Warriors in a way. Like, right. Well, they're going to win it anyway. I mean, it's pretty funny. It's kind of cool to kind of feel that way. So, I mean, people just expect it, and to just go ahead and back it up is pretty remarkable. What they've done there. Becky Kramer, right? It's got to be, that's going to be interesting as we, at some point in this summer when we do the banner, the awards.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at, obviously you have Scott Frost football. I know some people will like that, but he's up there obviously on the football side, but with Brian Konecko and Becky Kramer probably are right at the top as far as the top jobs in the spring sports are concerned. So amazing job. And Bryce Waller, maybe doesn't get the credit he deserves, right? I mean, the golf team, we just take that for granted. So it's great to see. Congrats to them on that, and really finishing it off on a good note.
Really happy for Becky too. She's so awesome. We've had her on the show before. She's fantastic. So hopefully we'll have her on one more time before the NCAA. So one other thing I wanted to mention. UCF track and field, like you mentioned, they went to the American Athletic Conference. They finished 10th. Women's track and field finished 10th in the conference, but Rosie Chamberlain was on the podium for the 800 meters. She finished in second. Natasha Jordan finished third in the high jump. UCF did get third in the 4x100 meter relay, and those were the best highlights for UCF from the American Track Championships. I mean, really difficult year for UCF track and field, considering that there was a shakeup up at the top. Roger Kingdom took over as the interim director of track and field and cross country, basically in the middle of the season with days to go before the season started. So we don't know what's going to happen with track and field, at least as of right now, but this should be a key summer for them going forward. Here's to hopefully another return to prominence for UCF women's track and field sooner rather than later. Okay, let's talk about the thing that's going to get Eric Lopez riled up once again, as though softball wasn't enough.
No, I think I got it out of my system with softball. I was still right there. Which, I mean, by the way, for those that I did an hour worth of venting on the softball committee and the Fast Pitch News podcast.
Are you going to be? Are you okay with that? Like, is everyone? Did anyone prominent be like, dude, lay off? You know.
Can I tell you a quick story about that?
Yeah.
So a year ago, when I did the podcast and I went off on the committee for leaving Minnesota, not even hosting. My boss now at Fast Pitch News, that's how he found the podcast, because he's a Minnesota Gopher alum. He enjoyed it. And that's when he approached me about joining Fast Pitch News and merging with the podcast to go to fastpitchnews.com. So actually, it was because of the Minnesota miscue that now I'm at fastpitchnews.com, where I write and I get compensated for that podcast. And in a couple of weeks, I get to go to Oklahoma City to cover the big event, the Women's College World Series. When you say that, no, actually, my bosses encouraged that, because
the bosses
they like
you
the fact
to throw the committee under the bus.
Well, I mean, I think Pete, that's how the fans feel. It was amazing how angry people were on social media. Like, they were angry, and I'll use the WWE analogy. It reminds me of the fans revolting against the Roman Reigns push, right, Murph? But yet the company, it keeps shoving it up our throats, and that's kind of where we're at in softball. You got the networks kind of pushing their narrative of, oh, this is great, this is awesome, and you got fans on social media ripping what they're doing. So that's the narrative. There's my second WWE analogy there for the
Elo's got me on a string. He knows exactly what to say to bring me back into this podcast.
Yeah.
Softball. Wait. WWE analogy. Huh? Yeah.
Speaking of networks pushing their agendas here. All right, listen. I'm not going to talk about what Nick Saban said about UCF's national championship.
Everybody else is, evidently.
I'm not going to talk about that, because to me that falls squarely under the category of what the hell do you expect him to say? Right?
Yes,
like,
thank you.
What do you expect him to say? He's Nick Saban. He's the head coach of Alabama. Now, here's where, again, UCF gets proven right on something, however. Came out earlier today. We're recording this on Wednesday, May 16th. Texas and Alabama have agreed to a home-and-home series in 2022 and 2023. The problem with this from a UCF perspective is that Texas backed out of the 2023 UCF game in order to get Alabama. All right, so the issue that I have here is not Texas back. Well, I mean, at least it's partially backing out from the UCF game. I mean, I get, why Texas would want to do that. But here's the problem that I have is that what's the one argument that we hear all the time from so-called Power 5 schools about UCF? What do they always say? Brian,
schedule somebody. Somebody.
That's right. Schedule somebody. Okay, well, we did. And they just bailed out of it to play Alabama. So this is the problem.
You're not telling the full story, though, Jeff. You're telling half truths here.
Hold that thought.
Okay.
Now, if that's the case, then they would find a way to get that Texas game back. Now, we'll get more into that in just a second, but this further proves UCF's point that not just UCF, but the entire group of five, so-called group of five, that says that, well, we are trying to schedule people, and look what happens when we do, right? Now, you say I'm only telling half the story. You go ahead and try and fill in the rest of it.
the reason that Texas UCF game was in 2023 is because UCF pushed that game to 2023 because they were originally supposed to play Texas this past season on September 9th. But in 2016, they moved it back because they didn't want to play Texas, Georgia Tech, and Maryland back to back in the schedule. That's in the Texas press release. That's not, they've said it. The UCF bought themselves out of the game. And that's the reason. I understand it why. Look, you're trying to win games. You're trying to build confidence at the time on the young team. How do you know that you're going to be undefeated? So I don't blame anybody for it, but the facts are facts. They pushed that game to 2023. So it's not like Texas all of a sudden just decided to drop them. UCF pushed it back, and you run the risk of getting dropped. And that's what happens in sport.
It is, because Texas could have pushed the UCF game back or moved it up. They have 2 slots available in 2021.
What if they didn't feel like it?
That's on them.
Remember, there's a new coaching staff there.
They have two.
Tom Herman now.
They have a game in 2021.
Yeah.
There are 2 slots in 2021 they could pick up. 2022, they're playing USF. They're also playing them in 2020. So I don't blame them for not playing 2 AAC teams in the same season. But if you're going to add Alabama in 2023, you could have had, now they've got USF again in 24. You could have moved UCF back 2 years to 25, or 3 years to 26, or 4 years to 27. Instead, they just dumped out of the UCF contract altogether.
How do you know they won't? Maybe they won't down the road.
Because they haven't.
How do you know Texas didn't want to do that? Because they know in 10 years that's going to be a conference game anyway. Whoa!
Oh. Where's the remix horn?
Murph, where do you stand on this from the perspective of not UCF but teams in the American in general and teams in the, like I said, so-called Group of 5? Like, if you're in charge there, all right, what do you have to do to get the kind of scheduling that everyone is complaining that you don't get?
I mean, you do what UCF tried to do here, and you schedule as best you can. I mean, and again, it's on UCF that they pushed it back. And I think Eric's right. Like, you don't know whether or not Texas is going to reschedule this game even a decade from now. They totally could. I think you just sort of you gotta have the on-field results, and the AAC. That means not just being good, but being noticeably good. Because if you're not in the SEC, the Big 12, the Big 10, and sometimes in the Pac-12, people aren't going to notice you if you're just good. Like, they didn't notice that Memphis was good this year, that USF was good. Like, you have to be great on a normal scale, and then you have to sell it. And and from there, it's basically, okay, hopefully you get some teams that say, you know what, we're gonna take that challenge, and it takes 2 to tango, sort of thing. It's just you gotta have someone say yes, and sometimes they don't, and they have good reasons for it. And this is unfortunate this happened to UCF, but again, they did push it back initially, and by the way, it worked out. Like, it kind of worked. It kind of worked.
It worked on the field. Yeah.
No complaining there.
Right.
And it could happen. It could come back. So I don't really have a big problem with this. And if it comes down to, like, well, do we want to have UCF or do we want to clear that week out so we can play Alabama? Like, I'd probably play Alabama. So I have no problem with this. For the other AAC teams, just gotta win. You gotta win and then sell it.
Here's the problem we have in the sport. Everybody wants to play 7 home games right now. That's the problem we're at. Everybody wants to play 7 home games. Nobody's willing to give in and say, hey, I'll give up a home game just to play this team on the road. Or, hey, let's play a neutral game or this. Or everybody wants to play it under their terms. So it's a lot harder to schedule. And I do think, to your point, Jeff, you're seeing more and more of a divide between the Power 5 and the non-Power 5 when it comes to scheduling, because I think the Power 5 would tell you, we don't need you guys. We don't need you, so go ahead and come to our turf, or else we'll just go play somebody else. And I think we're running into that dilemma right now, not just in football, but I think in other sports. And unfortunately, that's the battle that we're in.
This is where it's a catch-22, because if you're Danny White, right? You're trying to keep your fans happy. You want to try your best to get the 7 home games. If you end up getting 6, that's fine. So you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. If you don't get in order to improve the schedule, these teams are kind of holding you over the barrel and saying, "Well, you're going to play 2 out of 3 at our place."
Right.
You know, and
Right.
and,
I mean,
and,
that's
and when you
leverage,
come
right?
in and say, "Hey, wait a minute, no, we'll play home and home with you. We don't want to give up. We don't want to do the whole road only or 2 road games or 2 road games and 1 home game. That's ridiculous. Why would we agree to that?" And they're like, "Sorry." And,
Well, and the issue
this
is,
is
I think
why,
you mentioned
and that's why if you're Danny White, you have to be, pounding your head against your desk, saying like, "This is ridiculous. Why?" Well, I mean, we understand why, but like, what's the solution to that? Is there one?
I don't think there is. No, there isn't. I mean, that's just the way it is. So you have a choice. You can either go ahead and go with it, or you just deal with it. I mean, that's your choice. You can have the 7 home games. That's fine, but understand that the ideal schedule.
And then the fans complain about like, the home schedule's crap. Like, why are we playing Bethune-Cookman?
Right,
well,
correct. Then you got an FCS opponent, and right. I mean, the issue is ideally what the schedule you would like to have is what Houston had a couple of years ago when they happened to have Oklahoma at Reliant, neutral game. You also had Louisville that year at home, and they beat Oklahoma, and that got the buzz going a lot for Houston. And I think if Houston would have gone undefeated that year, that would have been fascinating to see how that would have played out. Unfortunately, they didn't. They didn't even win the league that year. I think some of it's luck. I think the scheduling thing is, I mean, I got to tell you, college football fans are idiots. They're the dumbest fans by far in all of sport.
But Eric is just laying waste to everybody in this podcast. It's
yeah, but I co-sign on that complete. I really do.
Because here's the thing.
Co-sign.
Here's the thing. This is what's so stupid about this whole thing. Every fan thinks that their team got screwed. Every fan thinks that the other team plays nobody and that they're overrated, and that nobody plays that beat anybody good except my team, right? So, like, the stupid Alabama fans, like, who did you UCF beat? They didn't beat anybody. And then UCF responds, well, who the hell did you beat? You guys, the SEC's overrated. You guys suck. Like, nobody beats anybody. Apparently, everybody sucks in the sport. Nobody plays anybody, and everybody ducks everybody. That's the way I kind of look at it in college football. That's how every fan looks at it. The reality is scheduling is tricky, right? Like, for example, you look at UCF this year. They have North Carolina and Pittsburgh. If you would have asked people 3-4 years ago, how good is, hey, wow, that's a damn impressive schedule. I mean, North Carolina, Pittsburgh. Right. Well, they both are coming off crappy years, right? So now all of a sudden, these stupid idiots are going to come into that are against UCF. Are going to say, well, geez, you guys didn't play anybody. Look, Carolina sucks and Pitt sucks. I mean, this contract was in place for 5-10 years ago.
Right.
But yet at the same time, I see UCF fans arguing with Alabama. Well, you guys beat a crappy Florida State team. Like, who the hell do you want Alabama to play? They played Florida State. Florida State was healthy. Like, that was built as the game of the year as far as the regular season. You can't control what happens after that. Like, it's stupid. Here's an idea. Just acknowledge the fact that Alabama beat some really good teams, and they're really good, and that UCF actually beat some good teams, and they're actually pretty good. And you know what? Both teams played crappy teams, too, that they beat.
No,
how about we just come to that?
We're not allowed to acknowledge that both teams are good. One team has to be better than the other one.
Oh, there you go, college football fan.
Oh.
But do you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's where we're at with the sport. That's why I'm sick of this banter back and forth. Like, these fans are idiots. Like, Alabama thinks they're the only team that plays anybody. And in their defense, they do play people. I mean, this idea that they don't play people, that's not true. They play Florida State. They played Michigan. They played Wisconsin. They play teams. It's not like they duck people. But UCF doesn't duck people either. But unfortunately, and I've said this, college football is an elitist sport, and they believe in brand names more than anything. And so that's the battle that you got to fight with. But, but you're not helping by fighting, well, who did you beat? You beat nobody. Like, I remember UCF fans were bashing Wisconsin last year for going with their schedule, which was hilarious. Like, aren't you, I mean, like, why are you ripping Wisconsin? Like, you all should be in the same fight. Like, you all beat good teams. You all beat some not good teams. I mean, I'm the biggest American Conference guy, but let's be honest. The Eastern Division outside of USF was garbage last year. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, Austin Peay, not a powerhouse. So we all play.
You can't drop that example on UCF. That was a desperation move because of the storm.
I understand, but I'm just saying, like, everybody has their good teams and everybody has their bad teams. And I think you brought this point up. Until you add criteria to your playoff system, of course it's always going to be biased and opinionated. The sport has always been based on opinion. It's nothing new. UCF's not the first team to have been a victim of that, and they won't be the last team to be a victim of that. This sport has always been based on opinions because there's no criteria.
What would be the criteria? If you were the college football czar, what would be the criteria?
Top 18 playoff, top 6 conferences, and you can even do an RPI formula or BCS formula, whatever you want to do. Top 6 conference champions automatically in. So that way, for example, if we did this past year, UCF would be in from the American Conference because they were the best league that was not a quote-unquote Power 5. I think that was proven. But you would also have teams like Ohio State in who should not apologize for losing a game or two. The problem I have with college football is we're somehow ripping teams for, well, you won the crap. You won the Big Ten. You won the pack. Like, winning a conference is hard to do. That shouldn't matter. You shouldn't apologize for that. And I don't think just because you go undefeated, you should be in a playoff either, because I think otherwise you're encouraging people not to play anybody. So I think conference champions, which means every game still matters, by the way. And if you don't win your conference, top 2 at larges make, and that puts pressure on you to play top teams. So I could go 8 teams. I know you have been a proponent of going even more than that.
I have been.
What's your net?
I mean, I do think that like 8. If I had to do it, it would be like you said, the top 6 conferences, and you would determine I think who the top 6 conferences are based on their overall record against other FBS teams. So that, I mean, 1 year you could have 1 year where, say, the top 6 conferences, one of them could be the American and another one could be the Sun Belt. Who knows?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that there should be some criteria, though, and Murph, I'd be interested to know what you think about this too. Is when it comes to scheduling, should you penalize a team for playing an FCS opponent?
Oh boy!
Now, bear in mind, if you're UCF, then you would get it for playing Austin Peay last year, or would you say would you take the penalty away if the FCS team you played made the playoffs? Like, how would you? Like, what do you think about that?
No, I mean, it's the sort of thing. Like, I don't know if you can penalize it because doesn't everybody do it? Like, Alabama has it right before the rivalry game, as most big teams do.
By the way, that drives me crazy that the SEC does that. What are you doing playing Mercer before you play Auburn? I know the SEC. I know the SEC does it, but anyway.
But I mean, because everybody sort of gets that one game on your schedule, like, well, at least we got to win here to sort of get the fans and like give the fans something to cheer about. Like, I'm okay with that. Like, it sort of suits both teams. It sort of suits like both teams' like desires. Like, if you're the FCS team, you get to play a quote unquote big boy from the FBS, and if you're lucky, like an old Appalachian State, and there's been many examples of this throughout recent years. I think Oregon State lost to an FCS team to open up this past season. You get a chance to say, hey, we beat an FBS team from a major conference. And if you're an FBS team, it's a nice date on the schedule. You can say, you know what, you want to come see us win, probably, quote unquote, in quotes, probably. Come on out to this. We should have
like James Madison beating East Carolina last year.
Yeah, I mean that happens, and for James Madison, I know it's only East Carolina because they're brutal, but it's still like you beat a team that's like literally not in your league. You beat a team out of your league, and that's still a feather in the cap. And then for the FBS team who should win, it's usually a really nice home game to come out and see some points scored. I think it's a fine relationship, and because everybody does it, like, and it's so accepted. No, I wouldn't say like you need a penalty for it. Like, it's fine.
Lopez, what would you do about FCS scheduling?
I'm not a fan of it. I mean, if that would help discourage teams from doing it and force them to play teams, I'm all for penalizing it. If that encourages teams to play other teams, but it is what it is. I don't know.
I think the other thing would be like I'm usually okay with it if you're playing an FCS team that's either within your state or from a neighboring or nearby state, right? Like, I mean, if UCF plays Bethune-Cookman, you're throwing your fellow state school a bone there,
right? I could see that.
Or like even like or a team from Georgia. I don't know. I forget who. Right. Or Valdosta, for example. But anyway.
Sure. But here's the thing: the bottom line is, until you add criteria, here's the thing: 4 teams ain't never going to work. Okay, because I can go back to 2014. TCU and Baylor had arguments to be in the playoff. You're always going to have arguments. It doesn't make sense. There's too many conferences. There's too much competition. it should go up to at least 8. And I think it would be the fairest thing to do. And that's how you get rid of the biasness. As long as we have the system that we have, you're always going to have biasness. And I think what Scott Frost said a week ago that people don't understand is I think Scott realizes that while this system is flawed, it's better than what he had when he played. And I think people missed that message. When he played, hell, the 2 best teams didn't even play each other. That's the thing that people better realize. It's not like the system was
won
better
only half a national championship because Michigan played Washington State in the Rose Bowl, and they were number 1. That was the Brian Griese team. And they won one half of the national championship. And Scott Frost in Nebraska defeated Peyton Manning in Tennessee in the Orange Bowl, and they won one half of it.
Correct. So he understands that this system, while it's flawed, clearly, is better than what he had when he played. And I think that's what his message was, that he respects the fact that it's a better system and they're in the right direction, but it's definitely flawed. And he pointed out the flaws of it. And let's be honest, Jeff, you have followed the college game like I have. This sport moves like a glacier. So it's not going to change next year. It's not going to change 2 years. Your hope is that they kind of grow it. And 10 years from now, and for the people that argue, the laughable part is they laugh when, if you add more teams to the playoff, it dilutes the regular season, which is the complete
That's one of the dumbest arguments I've ever heard in my life.
It is. If anything, it actually increases the regular season excitement because now
more teams have a shot.
Exactly. And so, but here's the thing: we're also, as fans, and this is why again, college football fans are the biggest idiots. There's a really simple solution to this. Don't go to bowl games. Don't watch bowl games. Don't support bowl games, because if you don't, then they go bye-bye. And then that forces their hand and like, crap. Well, now we got to get playoff games in. So that would be my advice. Don't go to bowl games. Don't watch bowl games. Don't support it. Don't support the system. It's fairly simple. I don't watch bowl games. I don't. And it's a big part of the reason I haven't done that for years unless my team isn't involved in it. And that's as simple as that. I won't pay for a bowl game. I'll never pay for a bowl game. I think it's one of the things that hinders this sport. I think the fact that we have 1 billion bowl games is embarrassing, and the fact that we're rewarding teams that are 6-6 is embarrassing, and 5-7 and whatever. If you want a playoff, if you wanted to expand with it, it's real simple. Don't go to bowl games. And here's the thing: if you really have an issue, let me ask you, gentlemen, this question: if you're a team, and it could be pick your team, and you feel you were just from the playoff system, and you get invited to whatever, the Peach Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, whatever bowl game that year is. What if you said no and said, you know what? No, I'm not putting up with this. I'm taking a stand. What if more teams did that? You're seeing players starting to skip bowl games for their draft prospects. Wouldn't skipping bowl games really send the message and really put the pressure?
If you're talking about the New Year's 6 bowl games, it would be financial suicide.
Oh, what did you say there, Jeff?
It's true.
Sorry,
it would be financial suicide. You're getting that payday, and if you choose to eschew that payday, I mean, your AD should fire your head coach then. Now, if we're talking about the Idaho Potato Bowl, where you get like 20 grand, I mean that's one thing. But I mean, you're not going to see teams give up like the non semifinal New Year's 6.
Well, then don't expect the system to change anytime soon.
Wasn't there an article today out that said like NCAA will not expand college football playoff? Like I think I read that like today or yesterday. Like
correct.
They've already said it. Like it was like it just came out. Like by the way, definitely not going to change what was already a quagmire this season.
No, part of that is they're under contract for I think till 2021,
2025.
Yeah. So they're not.
Oh, great.
They're not going to change anything for another decade. So that's like they said that 10 years ago. Oh, we're not going to change. The next thing you know, hey, let's go to 4 teams because that's what ESPN wants. Okay, great.
Yeah. Well, they're going to say they're going to sit there and say, oh, we're not going to expand it until ESPN says let's expand it, and then they're going to expand it.
Exactly. That's it. So the bottom line is it's not going to change until that happens, and that's why I don't blame players for skipping bowl games. I think if I endorse players skipping bowl games, take care of yourself. Don't worry about.
Well, especially if you're not in the semis.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't blame. Like, remember all the stuff about Leonard Fournette? Well, guess what? He was right.
Yeah, and so was Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah. So I don't blame those guys one bit. All right, we'll leave it right there because we've gone long enough. But like I said, you asked me, Eric, off air, like, when are we ever going to stop talking about this? The answer is never. Never. I mean,
there you go.
It's because that comes back to the UCF national championship debate too. That's always going to be there. It's always going to be there, and it's never going to get settled because we have no means of settling it.
That's because the college football media is a bunch of idiots. They have nothing better to do. So, I mean, seriously, like, they have no life.
All right, the college football media is idiots. All right, softball committee is idiots. I'm writing this all down.
We have. It's official. We have a drinking game. Absolutely, we have a drinking game, and you can put it on the front page of the Banneret. If you listen to this podcast, every time Eric Lopez says "idiot," you got to drink. You got to drink.
Okay, here's the deal. If you here's our new drinking game for our upcoming podcast. If Eric Lopez calls somebody an idiot on the podcast, you got to take a drink.
Absolutely.
All right, Eric, I'm looking for you
to. Can I make a request? If we're going to do that, can we just use the Chris Jericho liner when he goes, you stupid idiot?
Stupid idiot.
No. Here's the thing. If you are a person or part of the group of people whom Eric Lopez calls an idiot, you have to chug your drink.
Yeah.
All
yes.
Right. Are we in on
you're
this?
Listening to this.
Do we have an agreement?
And can I just be like a little like the peacekeeper here and just say, like, if to UCF fans who are listening to this and are offended that Eric Lopez has called you an idiot, if you think that's happening,
I didn't call them fans. I called college football fans idiots.
Well, I think people.
Well, UCF fans are a subset of that.
Our coach, right? I think what is trying to be said here is, like, just come at things with a little clearer and a more fair viewpoint. Don't always think that the world needs to revolve around your team.
Right.
Like, that's all it is. Okay, so just
I can see Kevin Reyes on the UCFsports.com message board saying, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Let me ask you both. You're both Yankee fans, so you deal with this crap a lot.
Yes.
Every time the Yankees win the World Series, what do the critics say?
They bought all their players. Yeah.
So what's your reaction? Do you get offended by that? Do you get into an argument, or do you just say, "Well, whatever"?
I know. I say whatever because I know they're wrong.
So here's my thing: if I'm a UCF fan, whatever Nick Saban says, Scott Frost, whatever, you went 13-0. It's the best year in your life. What are you worried about? What other people think? Who cares?
Why are you worried about what Nick Saban says? It doesn't matter.
It's the perpetual outrage machine. We have to crank that up because that's, people. And by the way, there's psychological studies about, and I know I'm going to get into some real PhD territory here, but there's some, even though I don't have one, but there's been studies done about, people react to negative, to sort of negativity more profoundly than positivity. I mean, that's how the entire cable news industry exists. It gets clicks, it gets ratings, rile people up, and it'll happen.
Doesn't that not to like delve into like human psychology here, but isn't that sort of rooted in the fact that, like, humans as a species are really uncomfortable changing their viewpoints because that in itself is uncomfortable. When they are faced with an opposing viewpoint that might make sense, the immediate reaction is to combat it with vitriol and things that make you feel more comfortable, even if your opinion is wrong, because changing your opinion is more uncomfortable than actually just saying, like, I'll just be right.
Yeah, this is about tribalism. I mean, and there's nothing more tribal in America than college football, and Brian, you're absolutely right. There have been more studies done on, it's called the backfire effect, where if someone has a preconceived notion that's false, and then you present them with correct information that's contrary to their preconceived notion, they won't change their mind. In fact, they will dig in further into their incorrect belief. So, LOL, nothing matters, as I say to my friend Matt Brodsky all the time. I mean, we're all screwed, and everything.
Enjoy your life. Like, enjoy your life. Like, I laugh when I see fans get all bent out of shape because Colin Cowherd made a comment and took a dig at UCF. Like, who cares? Who cares, man? Life's good. There's a lot more things to worry about than what Colin Cowherds or the Nick Sabans say. Like, who cares? You have a great football program. You live in Florida. Life's good. Like, come on, smell the roses. It's okay. Life's going to move on.
Yeah.
And I would say the same thing for other fan bases.
Win on opening day. win your next game, and then that's the thing that everyone wants to say is like, hey, I always say this. I forget who said this, but winning is the great deodorant. I mean, it gets rid of all the bad smells, and if you win this, no one can say anything. So.
Right.
Anyway.
Like you guys aren't gonna be like all mad when all these people said that you bought the title in October when you win the World Series for like the 50th millionth time and Giancarlo Stanton is the World Series MVP. You're just gonna brush that off. Who cares, right?
Yeah. We're gonna talk about the other 25 guys that the Yankees actually developed in their farm system. So.
And again, in a more like general sense, and this is sort of how I approach it. I approach every sport like. It is like in the end, it's just sports, and I know that's a bad thing to say on a podcast.
How dare you, Murph? How dare
I know it's a bad thing to say about like podcasts, but like this ain't like Syria or like the Palestine-Israel conflict. Like it's a football game, so it's not really that big of a deal.
The world moves on. I know it's a crazy thought, and it does move on, and eventually there will be a season.
Wow, this got existential in a hurry. Oh man,
I love it.
I enjoyed the PhD breakdown, though. I mean, how many?
Man.
I mean, that was pretty good. Actually,
wow,
you actually made me understand this a little better now. I actually feel better now. I think you've done some good tonight, Jeff. You've done some good.
We've achieved the omega point tonight, so I'm really proud of us. All right, let's wrap this thing up. Murph, I'll start with you. What do you have coming up this week?
I'll be at baseball if you didn't know.
By the way, congrats on your byline in the Sentinel, bud.
Oh boy! You know how I love talking about myself. All right, let's pivot to something else.
Listen. I'm asking you on this podcast to self-promote, so please self-promote.
Not in
it gives this podcast
years.
legitimacy.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Co-hosted by Orlando Sentinel contributor.
The Orlando Sentinel Zone, Brian Murphy.
No, I will not do it. I wouldn't say I got angry, but I got perturbed at the number of Orlando Sentinel references that were dropped in my direction over the weekend against Oklahoma by Trace and the people. Like they did all in good fun, but like I hate talking about myself. That's just not my thing. So let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the fact that I will be tweeting basically all day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That's what I will be doing basically. And then hopefully the next time you hear from me will be on an emergency podcast, possibly on Monday, maybe. I don't know.
Hopefully.
That'll be up to Jeff.
Eric, what about you?
Well, I'll be at Eric Lopezilo, where people will be tweeting me misconstrued any words I said in this particular podcast. They'll be calling me a hater. They'll be calling me a bunch of words.
Taken out of context. Obfuscating.
You're pettifogging issues over here. You're absolutely pettifogging issues.
So while you guys worry about all that stuff, I'm actually going to go to the Lightning Capitals Game 5. I'm looking forward to seeing Alexander Ovechkin. First time in person against Steven Stamkos. Little Game 5, Lightning Caps on Saturday. Hang out with some friends in Tampa and enjoy life, people. We live in one of the best states when it comes to weather and things to do. That's what I like to do, and we'll be doing that. And, of course, obviously following the softball stuff on the field to see what's going on, and so I can talk about it and act like I know what I'm doing on fastpitchnews.com. So that's probably going to be my and maybe pop a cameo at baseball if the weather allows it.
Sounds like a plan. I got what do you call it? I've got I'm hoping I can try and get down to baseball this week. I'm not 100% sure that I can, but
Jeff's got kids. Jeff's got like a life
I got
and
two
stuff.
kids. Well,
I'll leave you. They have baseball's a friendly kids game. It's for the kids.
Well, I don't know how friendly it is to a 6-month-old, but which, by the way, I'll leave you guys with this. So last week was a crazy week, and the reason why was because from Sunday evening or Sunday afternoon until Wednesday night, I was by myself with the two kids because my wife was up in Atlanta for a conference. And let me tell you something. I don't know how many of our listeners are single parents. All right, I don't know how many of them, but whoever is, God bless you, because I don't know how I survived that 72 hours. And you guys have made a have made it your life. So my hat's off to all of you who are. Because being by myself with two kids, one 4 years old, the other 6 months, let me tell you something. That was, you want to talk about how time flies? Time flies when that happens.
You turned into Arnold Schwarzenegger from Kindergarten Cop.
Yeah.
Just shut up!
And my son is like,
By the way,
I have a headache. It could be a tumor. It's not a tumor.
it's not a tumor.
But,
By the way, let's just like quickly point out that we have talked about an Oklahoma quarterback baseball player for about 10 minutes, the idiocy of softball committees, college football fans in general, human psychology and tribalism, and now Kindergarten Cop on a UCF podcast.
and Parenthood.
And Parenthood, and the troubles of Parenthood.
Listen,
so come on,
something
we're
for
not
everyone.
all just UCF. It really, we are dipping our hands into so many bags here.
I'm never a fan of whenever my students write this in anything that they write, but there's literally something for everyone in this podcast. So, all right, let's wrap it up here. Brian, Eric, thank you guys. Enjoy the weekend. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
All right, and thanks to you, the listeners, for listening. You can check us out if you don't already. Tell your friends, rate us on Google Play, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn. Follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com, Facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret, and UCF_Banneret. On Twitter, you can follow me at Jeff_Sharon. Follow Eric at Eric Lopez Elo. Don't forget all of his work that he does on Fast Pitch News and the In the Circle podcast, and follow Brian at Spokes_Murphy, and occasionally when he does like Orlando Sentinel stuff and whatever. So
shut up. Shut up.
For Eric and Brian, I'm Jeff. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We'll catch you next week.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.